into this Zoom meeting space. I'm Jessica Zimmerman. I'm a GBV project specialist with UNDP, and I'm part of the global project on ending GBV and achieving the SDGs, which we'll be discussing in far more detail today. Really, thank you so much, far and wide, for joining us. I know this is sort of where we have been. Many of us have been living this past, year and a half on Zoom. So and I know there's quite a lot of Zoom fatigue. So thank you for overcoming that and joining us here today. It's really a pleasure to be here with you all. Maybe I'll share just a few notes on digital housekeeping and introduce the speakers and let them take it away. I mean, yes, we probably have spent far too much time on Zoom, but just to share, everyone is on mute, and for the presentation piece, I would encourage everyone to have their cameras off just for quality. And then when we move into the Q&A, if you have a question, please do feel comfortable, and if your bandwidth allows, to put your camera on at that point. Definitely feel free to use the chat function at any point. If you have IT issues, if you would like to introduce yourselves to the group, and also any comments and questions that do come up. We'll be monitoring that during the presentations, and then we do have a hefty, a good chunk of time for Q&A, and we are recording, just for you all to be aware. So that's it on the housekeeping front, and I do see that there's been some more people that have joined us, so welcome to all of you. And without further ado, I'll introduce our speakers today. So we start off with Yosu Sanchez, who is representing UNDP's gender team. He is a program coordinator and the gender equality. He is a gender specialist and the program coordinator of the Gender Equality Seal. So thank you, Yosu, for joining us. Followed by Renata Rubien, who is a policy advisor for inclusive growth, cities and urbanization with UNDP. And then I'll pass the mic over to Dr. Anik Givers, who is the technical lead on integration pilots for the Ending GBV and SDGs project. And she will share a bit about what we are learning about integration, what we're calling integration projects more generally, and how to adapt and integrate GBV prevention into livelihoods and economic empowerment programs. And then Sasan Nurala, she joins us from UNDP Lebanon, where she's the National Gender Analyst, and she will give a bit more of an overview of the Lebanon project specifically. And lastly, but certainly not least, Gary Zetulian. And Gary, I encourage you to introduce yourself and say your name properly, because I fear that I've butchered that, and my apologies. And he is a gender program support and senior grants and partnership coordinator with Abad, who is one of our key leaders and partners in working on this project, as well as Joseph Nape, who is a project manager with ACTED, and who's also part of the consortium of the Lebanon project. And they will go deeper into the experience of integration, and then we'll open up for Q&A. So again, welcome everyone to this webinar on integrating gender-based violence prevention into livelihoods programs, learning from Lebanon's. And with that, I will pass the mic over to Yosu, who will kick us off with opening remarks. Yosu, over to you.
Hi, thank you very much, Jessica. Can you hear me? Yes, you can hear me. Perfect. Thank you. So, well, on behalf of Raquel Lagunas and the gender team, let me first welcome all of you to this webinar on integrating GBV prevention into livelihood programming and learnings from Lebanon. And this is the first of a series of 3 conversations that we will have on the experience of UNDP Lebanon. and its partners ABAT and ACTED, and these 3 conversations will happen this year, and we hope that this can start a meaningful dialogue between all of us. And before I hand over to Renata and also the wonderful presenters that we'll have, I would like to share with you some key messages that we think are relevant from the gender team. The first one is that this project is one of 7 pilots of the global project ending gender-based violence and achieving sustainable development goals, a partnership between the Republic of Korea and UNDP. And this project that began in 2018, take into account, of course, many different aspects, but I would like to highlight 2 of them. The first one is the recognition of the scale of GBV. Roughly 1 in 3 women have experienced physical or sexual violence at least once in their lifetimes. And this is even before the pandemic. And as we all know, data shows that the outbreak of COVID-19 has increased these figures very, very sadly. And secondly, this project takes into account the multidimensional nature of GBV. GBV is a human rights abuse with enormous health, social, and economical cost to survivors, families, and communities in which they live. GBV is a cross-sectoral and multifaceted issue, and thus to end GBV, we need to support from cross-sectoral, multifaceted, and whole society approaches. To end GBV, we need all hands on deck, and with the support of all actors, including those beyond gender in ministries and women's rights organizations. It is a collective responsibility, and as a small example, this is why we are here, different teams from UNDP supporting this initiative and this very relevant webinar. This initiative is rooted. Also, I think it's important to mention that it's rooted on GBV programming as a cornerstone and accelerator of other development aids, such as climate justice or ending poverty. In the Sikirwa, which you will hear more about from our colleagues in Lebanon, is an example of this approach, integrating livelihoods and GBV prevention. We would like to share also that in addition of this pilot in Lebanon, in Iraq and Uganda, we are integrating GBV prevention into large projects on sectors such as social cohesion or climate change. That the pilot that we are implementing in Bhutan is exploring the linkages between GBV and violence against children, and pilots in Indonesia, the Republic of Moldova and Peru are using participatory local level action to establish sustainable financing to prevent and address GBV. So different pilots are touching different important areas on GBV prevention and SDGs. While these initiatives are all ongoing, we can see that they provide some good outputs that can feed multiple birds with one seed. So 3 of these results would be that promotes innovation mindset, the ability to respond to new challenges with creativity and humility, to persist, and to find alternatives in the face of setbacks and foster feedback loops from the ground. It also promotes diversity of partnerships, including horizontal collaboration with women leaders and women's networks, and also partnering with unusual suspects or actors that haven't historically not been at the center of the GBV work. So bringing more partners to this important area of work. And last but not least, feminist working practices. This project promotes practices such as strong focus on participatory approaches, fostering feminist curiosity and practice-based learning, and attention to mental health and well-being as well, both to project personnel and communities we serve. And the work of Lebanon that we will learn more today is a great example of these key elements of success. Before I finish and hand over to Renata and colleagues, let me share also that this initiative on GBV and SDGs is one example of UNDP's broader effort and commitment to end GBV. In 2020, UNDP has supported over 80 countries, including 23 country offices through the Spotlight Initiative. You all may know that it's a European Union UN partnership to eliminate all forms of violence against women and girls. And let me finish mentioning that the fight to end GBV is a collective effort, all the more in the face of the COVID crisis that is intensifying the gender inequalities and threatening the rollback decade of progress in many aspects of women's human rights. So with this, I'm very happy to hand over to the next presenter, and very happy to see many colleagues here with us today. So thank you very much, and looking forward to meeting you again.
Thank you so much, Jesus, and good morning, colleagues. It's a pleasure, really, to be here today, and it's heartening to see so many colleagues connected, a lot of colleagues also from outside of UNDP, working with UNFPA, and colleagues from country offices. I work directly with Inclusive Growth Portfolio, and I know a lot of my colleagues are also connected here today, so I'm sure that we will have a very vibrant discussion. Not to say that it's actually, we are in a very crucial point to discuss this topic of GBV, particularly as we are facing and supporting countries with COVID-19 recovery, as many of these countries will have to think about economic losses and how to put economies back into their feet and generating jobs. So it's very opportune to have this discussion here today. Globally, I think we all are convinced and we know what is the need of the economic case for focusing on GBV. We know that the World Health Organization estimates that 35% of the women globally, in particular, have suffered gender-based violence, so they are survivors of GBV. Jesus, and we all know that before we talk about the economic case of GBV, we all recognize that GBV is also a human rights violation, so it's about human rights. So without losing that perspective, I will focus on the economic aspect of it. We know that there is clear evidence of the direct impact of GBV in economic growth. The World Bank estimates, as a very conservative figure, that about 1.2 to 2% of GDP globally is impacted by GBV. And we know what it is, the direct impact of GBV, which leads to loss of productivity, loss of real wages and income, particularly in the case of women. And it also directly affects the health costs across all countries that we see, developed and developing countries, leading to long-term mental health concerns. The loss of GDP globally is approximately the same amount of what low-income countries today invest in terms of real terms of GDP in education. So just to understand the magnitude of the cost of GBV for economies, for growth, for societies, beyond the human rights concerns. When we speak particularly on economic empowerment, and here in this case, women and economic empowerment as a pragmatic approach to reduce and prevent GBV, I think it's a very interesting case. UNDP has a lot of broad experience in fragile country context, and I think it would be fascinating to learn from our colleagues from Lebanon on this, and also in a stable situation. So I think it's important to see the real impact of GBV in terms of economic development, livelihoods, and programming, and the linkages. But few challenges remain out there. One is we have across many of our programmatic portfolio, we have very few impact assessment, impact evaluations on the real results of economic empowerment to prevent and to mitigating the GBV in many cases. So we know that a lot of our evaluation is still focused in terms of targets. So if we look at in terms of the portfolio in inclusive growth in UNDP, this is about almost 1/3 of the projects of UNDP are in this area: inclusive growth, livelihoods, poverty reduction, and a lot of the programmatic response have a potential to effectively integrate GBV lenses. But right now, it's likely not the case in many of the countries, so there is a missing opportunity element there. So what we see in terms of challenges, obviously, that because of this lack of evidence in terms of impact evaluation, often the way the programs can be implemented, if we are not careful, there is a basket of mixed results in terms of livelihoods and economic empowerment to be a preventive, effective intervention to prevent GBV. So I think it would be great to listen to Lebanon to see how they have addressed that challenge heads on. The second thing we see when we look in the portfolio is that while we see a lot of integration of the interventions for economic empowerment and promotion of livelihoods and income, including women and girls consideration, in a lot of these projects, again, because I said there is no effective impact evaluation across all countries yet, we are starting with impact evaluation. In a lot of countries is very much focused on the target and the numerical representation. So we need to go beyond the numbers to ensure that these approaches are really transformative on the ground. So UNDP has a lot of experience. So if we look at the portfolio, like I said, we have a lot of experience in fragile contexts, in stable contexts, and a lot of these interventions will differ because of the vulnerability of the groups affected by GBV. But we do have a lot of work on microcredit, economic tools and opportunities in the portfolio, and social protection measures, labor policies, access to land, access to assets, and value chains, and how these have a potential to prevent GBV. One thing that I would ask, and I think this is a big opportunity for us with the project that is being supported by the Republic of Korea, is actually to create this integrated approach, integrated opportunity, that we start seeing GBV as a parcel and integral part of all our programs on inclusive growth, of boosting livelihoods. So I think it is time to push for this integrated approach across our portfolio. So I look forward to learning more today from the successful experience on integrated approaches and delivering packages of interventions from our colleagues from Lebanon. So over to the next presenter. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. I'm just going to, if you bear with me for 1 second, share my screen. So thank you so much for setting that global context for us, Renata and Yosu. It's really helpful as we now move to think through and think about the integration work that we have been trying in different places and different themes. And so I'm the technical advisor for the integration pilot projects, and I'm going to share with you today just some preliminary reflections on success strategies, challenges, and the way forward for integrating GBV prevention into various sectors. So if we just think about all the projects that have worked on integration, what we have found is that integrating from the conceptual stage will drive integrative design and implementation process, which is really helpful. So it isn't an add-on if it's thought of right in the early stages, rather than identifying a project later on that you would like to integrate GBV prevention into. So it seems like something really basic and simple, but that wasn't the case for all of the projects in this learning process. So for example, in Lebanon, there was already clear commitment to an integration of gender equality in the women's empowerment work, so that integrating GBV was done relatively seamlessly. But being able to do this from inception, from the time that you're writing the project document or seeking funding, that can really set you up for success from early on and put it into the very DNA of the project. And the other thing to consider is staff and partner recruitment. So here, recruiting people and partners with experience and expertise and capacity on working on GBV is really helpful. And this will help ensure that there is full buy-in for this kind of work. So for example, again, in Lebanon, Salsan's position required somebody with GBV and gender experience. The TORs that went out to find implementing partners had an integrated TR, and Salsan will talk a little bit more about this, but this is really important and goes a long way to ensuring buy-in, and the buy-in goes a long way to ensuring ongoing success in doing integration work. The other thing to remember is that there is quite a strong evidence base for GBV prevention programming, but not necessarily for integration programming. And so, but be that as it may, it's really important to build on the existing evidence base and not feel like you need to start from scratch. And whichever sector you're coming into, to also build on that evidence base and see how to bring those together. So developing an integrated theoretical model or theory of change model is really helpful to understand what the core practices are that ensure ethical and effective programming is really helpful to understand at the beginning of designing this work. So again, in Lebanon, for this project, the team chose a very good fit intervention model to adapt and didn't start from scratch, as well as working with an organization that is leading GBV work in the region, which is really very helpful and goes back, just reinforces the previous point. Then really what we found helps teams succeed in this work is to really embrace continuous and multi-directional learning and reflection, and to make adjustments or adaptations as needed. So this is going to ensure that your program is effective and ethical, especially not doing any harm, and that you are achieving goals from the GBV work as well as on the livelihoods and economic empowerment work or other sector work, depending on what you're integrating, and that it's also contextually appropriate and feasible going forward. And just to really emphasize this idea that learning and reflection is multi-directional, all sectors can learn from one another, all the partners learn from one another, as well as there being a lot of internal learning and sharing. And to really seize this opportunity to learn, you know, for example, in Lebanon, the team has had to make multiple adjustments for various reasons, including COVID, which we've all had to deal with. But there's also been the great fortune to be able to partner with a really leading organization with deep levels of expertise on addressing GBV. And so that's really been great to be able to have the bidirectional learning there. But integration work is not without its challenges. And I do want to share these because I think it's important to be as equipped to set yourself up for success, but also to proactively be able to face challenges and hopefully head some of them off proactively and at the outset. So the first thing is that GBV risk monitoring and mitigation is a non-negotiable and need to be integrated in ways that adhere to best practices in GBV research. It's absolutely critical that this be done from the beginning, that everybody's on board, because this is about the safety of the participants and the team. It can be time consuming, it can be costly, but it's really important that projects don't take a business as usual field visit and M&E approach because of the sensitivity around GBV and GBV being a highly underreported issue. So there's a lot to learn from the ethics guidance around GBV research and being able to apply that to the risk monitoring and mitigation work. Then it's very likely that in many cases, internal advocacy, capacity development, and transformation is needed. And again, this is bidirectional. I focus specifically on ensuring that there's a common understanding of GBV and how GBV intersects with other development challenges. But really, this is a co-learning space. So that because the more the different groups who are coming together understand about the issues being faced, the better you can come up with integrated solutions and have integrated planning and programming. Obviously, one of the things that can save a lot of time in terms of doing the internal advocacy and approach shift is if you recruit staff and partners and include the integrated GBV work from the very inception stage. Some organizations may need to think about an approach shift because tackling GBV may be quite different to the business, the sort of usual business model of doing other work, or vice versa. And so it's just really important to be very open and have and invest in this early on. Then we also need to remember that innovative integration work is about disrupting these business as usual practices. And so that really requires space for mistakes. And so it's really something to reflect on, especially if you're leading teams, is how much space is there within our organizational culture to make mistakes, and to be quite open about that. Because if there is really great pressure to present everything as successful, then that's really very difficult for teams who are trying to do something quite new and find new ways of working and driving forward work and simultaneously in multiple sectors instead of in silos. I think we also need to remember that this work and doing this work, the integration work, means that we're all in a learning space. We're all outside of our comfort zones. And we're going against the grain by rejecting the typical work in silos that many, many places still use and are stuck in. And so we need to get comfortable with being uncomfortable. And collaboration and transformation are really core to being able to do integration work, we found. But doing that means that skills in having uncomfortable conversations and conflict resolution, and especially in flexibility in programming and management, are really important. And so that's something to really reflect on as you embark on any kind of integration journey. And so just some of our reflections on the way forward for integration work. I think that it may not be for every project or even every team, but it could be a really exciting avenue to explore, and it has really great potential. We still have a lot to learn about how to do it seamlessly, successfully, effectively, and ethically, which sectors or projects lend themselves to integration. And we would say that building on the lessons learned on maximizing success strategies and to meet and manage challenges proactively. Also to ensure that there's a non-negotiable commitment to GBV risk mitigation and ethical programming, and to keep learning and sharing. But this is also just one potential solution to addressing the fact that staring us in the face that GBV is both an enormous and a cross-cutting problem. And so that's what I've shared. I'm really looking forward to this discussion today. But for now, I will pass over to Sasan.
Hello, everyone. Just 1 second, I need to share my screen. So I am Sausan Nurello, the National Gender Analyst at UNDP Lebanon, and I will be presenting today our experience from Lebanon on integrating GBV prevention within women economic participation programming as implemented by UNDP in partnership with ACTED and Abad organization. And I will start by giving you an overview.
I think we lost Sausan. Sausan looks like she's on mute now. I wonder.
Oh, apologies. Can you hear me now?
Yes, perfect. Thank you.
Great, great. So I will start with providing an overview on the gender context in Lebanon. As you all know, Lebanon is currently facing a multi-layered and unprecedented crisis at various interrelated levels, including political deadlock, economic and financial crisis, the outbreak of COVID-19, the Beirut explosion, and the continuous impact of the 10 years long Syria crisis. All this climate has exacerbated the pre-existing gender inequalities and the discriminations in Lebanon and affected directly women's employment. Women already faced limited employment opportunities, and they are concentrated in informal, insecure type of employment. As a result of the crisis, women unemployment rate has increased from 14.3% to 26%. In addition, women face restricted ownership of productive assets and resources over productive inputs. They are underrepresented in decision-making processes, and they face increased risks of gender-based violence risks in the private and public spheres. they have limited enabling environment and gender sensitive environment as a result of the restricted gender roles, social norms, and their engagement in unpaid and care work. And although Lebanon has ratified the Convention of Eliminating All Forms of Discrimination Against Women, CEDAW, the legal framework still have a lot of articles that are gender biased and discriminatory.
Did we lose Sasan? I think there was potentially maybe going to be a technical internet challenge on her end. Let's give it maybe, oh, I see her in the waiting room, and maybe Anika Serdepity, maybe if you can stand on, be on the ready. But I believe Sasan will be back with us just in a moment. Thank you everyone for the patience. Yes, hi
Hi,
Sasan.
I am back. And I apologize, this is part of the context in Lebanon where we don't have electricity as a result of the crisis. So I truly apologize for this. I will continue now with my presentation. I was discussing before the gender context, and I will move to the intersection between women economic empowerment and gender-based violence. The project builds on the increased recognition of the relationship between Sustainable Development Goal 5, focusing on gender equality, and Sustainable Development Goal 8, focusing on economic growth. It recognizes gender-based violence as both a barrier for women's economic empowerment and also an unintended outcome for women economic empowerment. In fact, there is a growing number of research that has examined the intersectional element and links between women economic empowerment and women's experience of gender-based violence. Evidences have shown that women economic empowerment can decreasing gender-based violence and domestic violence risks if it increases women's household bargaining power and ability to leave a violent relationship, decrease household poverty, and also provide women with the skills to negotiate household gender-powered relations. This at the individual level. At the community level, gender-based violence will decrease if women economic empowerment will contribute to shifting attitudes, gender relations of power, and reduce community acceptance of gender-based violence and domestic violence. Based on this theory, we have designed our project and integrated the gender-based violence within the Women's Economic Participation Project. Taking into consideration as well that women economic empowerment can contribute to increasing GBV and domestic violence risk, especially that men sometimes use violence to seize or control women's income and resources, and sometimes express dissatisfaction about shifting household roles when women will be more having the role of breadwinners and use violence instead. In addition, at the community level, that sometimes the widespread anger and backlash among women in the community in response to women increasing market activity and economic status might increase the risk of gender-based violence as well. At UNDP, we have integrated the gender-based violence prevention throughout all the project cycle management phase. In the design phase, the project has been informed by a gender value chain study, which investigated the gender power relations and dynamics at the household, community, and marketplaces. As well, we have analyzed the gender vulnerabilities and division of labor and the implication of both social norms and the legal framework on women economic empowerment and the gender-based violence at the same time. During the stage of recruiting partners organization, gender-based violence prevention was included as a cross-cutting element in the call for a proposal for partners and in their terms of reference. It was not a standalone activity. It is integrated within all project activities and outcomes. We have encouraged, as UNDP, applying organization for the call of proposal to consider consortium arrangement, hoping that we will have different expertise that can leverage to fully achieve the project outcomes at the level of women economic empowerment and the gender-based violence. And during the selection phase, we have selected organization with wide-ranging functions that combine diversified expertise either on the livelihood level or women empowerment and GBV prevention programming levels. And that's why we are working with a consortium which have different expertise and different functions. We have also prioritized the proposals which committed to conduct regularly GBV risks analysis and mitigations plans on a regular basis throughout the project implementation. Now I will discuss the project implementation phase. UNDP has worked with partner organizations to ensure that all project staff understand and can assess GBV risk within the activity scope and can create measures together to reduce and mitigate those risks. We have used economic entry point and specifically the technical skills training to advance women into the value chains for changing power relations by increasing women's power in the market and in the community. We have also ensured having an interdisciplinary programming in which we integrate gender-based violence prevention within different types of intervention and different spheres. At the individual spheres, we believe that no solution can fit everyone approach. Therefore, we have addressed women's particular needs and opportunities in the marketplace and at the community level. We have included a psychosocial support component and work on strengthening women's agency, autonomy, and bargaining power, and addressing as well the dynamics at the household decision-making. We have worked as well with women-led co-ops and enterprise in order to strengthen women's collective action and power. At the social level, we were keen to include the GBV prevention in all project awareness raising efforts, either online or offline campaigning. We are working on challenging and transforming harmful social norms and the practices towards both women economic empowerment and women's safety and protection. We are recognizing and working on campaigning to redistribute and reduce unpaid care work. And definitely we are engaging men in order to transform toxic masculinity behaviors. At the economic level, gender awareness and prevention of sexual exploitation and abuse is integrated throughout all the support provided to enterprise, SMEs, startups, and cooperatives. We are working as well with business institutions to create safe and secure working environments for women and promoting inclusive business models that support women's leadership. At the political level, we are mainly working with the municipalities, focusing on institutionalizing gender inequalities in the municipal policies, procedures, and work. And we are facilitating as well the creation of safe spaces for women to discuss with the municipality officers their concerns and their needs in order to create together plans that advance women's economic participation and can create safe spaces as well for women. So we are working on bridging the gap between women and the municipal officers. Now at the level of monitoring and evaluation, as a project, the M&E framework aims at investigating the extent to which integrating GBV prevention can contribute to the acceleration of women economic empowerment outcomes in targeted communities. We have integrated the power framework and we are monitoring shifts in various forms of power, either in power within, power to, power over, and power with, in order to measure as well how change has happened throughout the project implementation. Our M&E framework applies three-dimensional model for women empowerment. It recognizes 3 levels of changes: at the individual and personal level, at the relational level, specifically monitoring and evaluating changes in relationships and power dynamics within women's surrounding network, either in the household, community, markets, or with community leaders. And at the environmental level, monitoring formal and informal change in the economic, social, and political spheres. And throughout all this monitoring and evaluation, we have developed a holistic and integrated quantitative survey tool that address both women economic empowerment and the gender-based violence indicators to measure changes at both endline and baseline and endline level. And that's it in the nutshell. And I will leave it now for my colleagues, Joseph and Gary, so they can present more in depth the lessons learned and successes from the integration project.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Susan. Can you hear me well?
Hello?
Yes, yes, we can hear you. There is a little bit of an echo, but yes, please go ahead.
Thanks for confirming. So I'm Joseph Nakhle from ACTED Lebanon, leading on the WEP project, Women's Economic Participation Project, that is implemented in partnership with ESDU, the Environmental Sustainable Development Unit at the AUB, so American University of Beirut, as well with DOT, so Digital Opportunity Trust, and Abad, the local women organization. So under this part, I will tackle mainly the success factors, the benefits, and the challenges regarding the integrated approach and having the GBV component as part of the livelihood. So first, I will start with the success stories, and my colleague Gary from Abad will continue with the benefits and challenges. To start first, I'll give you an overview of the project outcomes. As mentioned in the previous presentations, the main problematic that we based the project on is that women limited access to opportunities and control of resources and benefiting from the economic opportunities. So based on this problematic, we based the project and actually designed it in a way to integrate women's economic participation with advocacy efforts. So working on the person level, so the individual level, the community, and the systemic level. So on the women level, mainly building their capacities, technical capacities on their different value chains. Under the community level is mainly to advocate and actively support the women economic participation and leadership. As well, under the systemic level with the municipalities, we are working on enhancing their capacities actually to engage meaningfully and designing initiatives to support women's economic participation. So that's an overview of the project outcomes. We'll go through, like, for you to visualize actually how the project is implemented. So in Lebanon, it's implemented in 2 governorates, in Bekaa and South. We have 4 axes for outputs, mainly first targeting individual women, Syrians and Lebanese, providing technical capacity building, as well soft skills, PSS training provided by Abahad. So on another level, we're working with cooperatives, SMEs, and startups as well to build their capacities, their development capacities and marketing capacities, providing sub-grants for them to leverage their entities. As well, they are receiving a GBV component, GBV activity, which is the protection against social exploitation and abuse. For the municipalities, we are conducting assessment to check their levels in terms of GBV, as well providing capacity assessment, and mainly on the national GBV SOP. As well, at the end, on the community level, we are raising awareness on women's economic participation, women's rights, women's equality. So mainly we are working on more of an area-based approach, targeting in the same areas women, groups of women under cooperative startups and SMEs, conducting advocacy with the local community, as well working with the decision makers, which are the municipalities. Here to note that since the project is also building the economic opportunities of the women, we are providing job counseling for the trained women, as well supporting linkages with the private sector for better economic and opportunities. So here you see that the GBV component is a cross-cutting component across all the activities implemented in the project, and it's strongly present and is considered as 50% of all the activities that we are conducting. So mainly I'll go through the success factors. First, I'll start by, during the design project period, building the partnerships and building actually the internal capacities of all the partners. So as mentioned by Anik and by Sausan, during the design phase, we start thinking of the project directly including the GBV components. So that's why we were looking for a strong partner that is able to lead on this component. and to deliver these activities to the women. As well, we conducted at the beginning of the project's capacity building and training sessions conducted by Abad to all implementing partners to understand the different concepts of GBV, to be aware, to be able not to become expert in this, but at least to be able to identify cases of GBV, to know how to do referrals, and to be able to work with a woman in the right way. So here I want to mention as well that as ACTED, we have a strong protection department that we are in close collaboration and close discussion with, to make sure that the livelihood, that the protection is mainstreamed as well in all the livelihood components and activities that we are implementing. On more of a programming level and going to regarding the components of the project and beyond the economic and technical skills training, the women part of the project follow the PSS sessions. So we work on more increasing their self-esteem, their self-perception as providers and not only caregivers, self-confidence and self-worth. So this is a very important component with regards to the economic empowerment. As well, raising awareness about gender power relations and GBV and how to avoid and handle household conflicts. And since with the crisis, we adapted our approaches and interventions from on-site to online modalities. So we had to be creative in order to accomplish the trainings. So we created WhatsApp groups for the beneficiaries, which was as well some sort of a space for women to share their ideas, to feel comfortable, and this encouraged as well the formation of social networks and encourage discussion between the women beside the technical trainings. During our intervention field visits, we hear a lot of feedback from participants, and here I included some that like they mentioned that all the topics discussed during the sessions are very important and needed, especially that women are often suppressed in our society. So they benefited from such a project which offered support and allowed women to communicate and discuss their needs and concerns. We hear a lot of feedback and positive feedback from beneficiaries, from women and men part of the project. On another level, during the inception phase of the project, we initiated discussions with the municipalities where we are working to get their buy-in. So we explained the project explicitly and clearly, and that it's not only a livelihood project, but it has a strong protection component, and that the buy-in and the willingness of the municipalities and the community leaders to commit is very important. And we convinced them that their commitment is important to promote equality, and create the safe space, or the space actually for women to be able to participate economically in the society. As well, working with men in the Shakirwa, as mentioned by Jesus, is to reduce the resistance and backlash, to raise awareness about masculinities and gender socialization, to encourage less biased gender attitudes and norms and beliefs, and promote women's rights, and facilitate mutual respect and open communication. Under all the project, all the components of the project, we use a participatory approach to raise awareness under all the components and advocate for women's economic participation. So here, actually, it's a quote that was during our last field visit when discussing with men taking the GBV session. He mentioned that he wished that this session was given 20 years before, as it gave him the opportunity to discuss such sensitive topics, actually, the PSCA, with his wife, and will also share the information with his surroundings. I will give the floor now to Gary to talk more about the challenges as well the impact. Gary, over to you.
Thank you, everyone. This is Gary Zaytunalian. I'm from Abad, Resource Center for Gender Equality, a local women's-led organization. Give me 1 second, please, to share my screen. So the challenges that we'll be discussing today are at 2 levels. Level 1 will have to focus on the integration and programmatic challenges, versus the second challenge is being more on the operation and logistical. I think all of us discussed today the importance of having an integrative approach, but discussing that also means really needing to align our programs together. And as it was mentioned by Joseph and Sausan, we used the consortium methodology for this project, meaning it was really important that the TVET component or the technical trainings that were being given by ACTED really aligned with our soft skills training, also referred to as PSS. So it's really important that there's an overlap, meaning that beneficiaries receiving the TVETs were also receiving the PSS activities that Abad were giving at the same time to ensure complementarity. The second challenge regarding integration really has to focus on really having a common understanding of gender being cross-cutting, not just among partners, but also among the different outcomes. And as also explained by Joseph at the beginning of his presentation, there are different elements for this project. So you could really view them as them being puzzle pieces. So it's really important to have a gender being really understood and having it be integrated throughout all of the different outcomes. And that really means using a top-down approach, which means working with municipalities, having them become more engaged, which will then trickle down to working with our communities, who are the cooperatives and small to medium enterprises. And then hopefully also with our intended target, which are the women, the husbands, and the households, for the overall aim of the project, which really focuses on women economic empowerment. Third, Lebanon, as explained by Sausan, has been going through a bad socioeconomic situation with crisis after crisis. Therefore, gender, unfortunately, has become deprioritized at the municipality level. This was also very common and very seen during the COVID-19 pandemic, when municipalities were really focusing on lockdowns and then ensuring vaccination processes. So really, the women economic empowerment unfortunately took a deprioritized stance at this point. And lastly, it's really important to create an environment that promotes and endorses women economic empowerment, while also focusing on protecting women and ensuring their safety. So having the right balance is something that we had to consider while the project design and project implementation, and of course, during its monitoring and evaluation. The second set of challenges really focused on the operational challenges. Of course, with COVID-19, we had to adapt all of our modalities and our implementation. Therefore, we had to utilize unconventional ways of providing soft skills training and psychosocial support. This is where Abad developed its WhatsApp sessions. So that meant that we had to create virtual safe spaces where women and girls can come together to discuss issues, while also focusing on empowerment, self-confidence, and really making sure it aligns with the overall objectives of the project. So to do that, we had to create specific guidelines, policies, procedures to ensure the safety and well-being of our beneficiaries during these trying times. That being said, I think all of us have experienced Zoom fatigue or having to attend webinars and different types of online meetings, etc. So it was the same issue that we've noticed with the engagement of participants. There was a fatigue. This also led to us having to come up with other ways to ensure their participation. And lastly, Lebanon has a lot of logistical and operational difficulties in terms of power cuts, blackouts, internet difficulties. So all of these have to be taken into account. So in order to mitigate, this is where we really focused on working closely with our beneficiaries to make sure what works best for them in order to adapt our programs to really address their needs. Next slides will focus on the successes and impact. So definitely what has benefited women the most is that there has been an improved psychosocial well-being. And we had asked the women by really identifying how they were able to make more decisions at the household level. And this really helped them, and they have actually informed us that they have become more vocal and more active in their community and participating more at the municipality level in making decisions. And this is where in future webinars we'll be discussing as well how the gender cafe that we are developing really focuses on putting an emphasis on women's engagement with municipalities at the forefront. Secondly, as I said, having to use remote modalities allowed Abad to create virtual safe spaces for women. And during these times when we were discussing soft skills, self-confidence, women really reported to us and saying that they felt less isolated during the pandemic because they felt that they had a regular session that they could be attending where they could discuss common experiences, common challenges, common fears. So it felt as though they were part of an online community, which really helped them create a sense of a social support network. Also, we have seen really positive buy-in from municipalities. As part of this project, Abad has developed what we call a gender index assessment. What that means is that we would assess municipalities on various variables having to do with how gender sensitive and how gender inclusive they are. And the results of this gender index assessment would really help us see how to engage and approach municipalities. And this is the basis on which we are developing our GBV training and engagement activities with the municipalities. After we've done our initial assessments, we've noticed that there is a huge interest from municipalities to be more gender inclusive, to be more gender sensitive, and to really invest in having more women economic empowerment activities and initiatives within their communities. Also, the integration approach really allowed Abad to really focus on identifying women and girls who are at risk or survivors of GBV. At the onset of every session that we did, we always highlighted Abad's services and how to access these types of services, which includes giving Abad's 24/7 helpline number and also accountability helpline number. And all of our staff, our PSS staff, are trained on identifying and referring GBV cases to our women and girls safe spaces where they could receive holistic case management. This brings me to our second point. With TVET, or the hard skills training that ACTED are doing, could be one of the action points that a survivor of GBV utilizes for her own security and safety plan. And lastly, this brings everything together. The whole purpose of having an integrative approach is really making sure that all survivors or women at risk are not lost or shuffled in the gaps. They are identified and referred to appropriate services to really ensure that their safety and protection are highlighted. And that's our presentation.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much to Gary, Joseph, Sasan, Anik, all of the speakers that we had today. I think we're actually on perfect time, and we have plenty of time on discussion, which I think is fantastic, as we have, you know, a whole slew of folks from different disciplines and different backgrounds that we can draw on to also, you know, hear more about their experience and really have a comprehensive exchange here. So there's been a couple of questions that have come up in the chat. I think for this portion also, please raise your hand. I see that there's one hand raised. And I think also for us, you know, especially for those people who maybe are more shy or maybe English isn't their first language, if you feel like you would be more comfortable asking a question in Arabic or French, we have people here who can do the translation for you. So I wouldn't want that to be a barrier to your engagement. So I think there was the first question that came from Sachiko. I don't know if you wanted to take the floor, and then we have a question from Sarah, and I see hands from Obi and Zainab. So we'll go in that order. Over to you, Sachiko, if you'd like to ask your question.
Okay, thank you, Jessica. I hope you guys can hear me okay?
Yes.
Great. So yeah, my question is regarding like activities promoting women's control over resources, including like income. Because very often when we do like economic empowerment for women, even they increase their income, but it doesn't mean that they increase their control over resources, even in their household. So my question is like, for the program which was just presented to us, is there any like special activities promoting or encouraging control over resources by women? And if it's relating to campaign, including like awareness raising campaign for men, then I also would like to hear like what was the approach that the program took to make the awareness successful. Thank you.
Okay, I think we have a lot of questions coming in, so maybe we'll take a couple, Sachiko, and there is also a question from Sarah in the chat around indicators. I don't know if you would like to share it with the rest of the group.
Thank you,
And then I think we'll take a question from Obi, and then I'll pass it back to the presenter.
Sure, thanks a lot. Thank you for all the presenters. It was really very interesting to hear and to learn. My question was about indicators, and because it was mentioned at the beginning before Gary or Joseph about indicator used for the women empowerment and GBV. So just wondering which indicators were actually measured. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Sarah. We'll go to Obi and then give a chance for all of the speakers.
Yes, thank you so much for coordinating this meeting, and thank you so much, Susan, for doing a good job with your team. My question is, what is the sustainable system or plans, for this project? And I mean, are they?
Obi Peter, I'm afraid we lost you.
What has the community of? Secondly, what did you involve special needs women and girls in this project? I mean, people with disabilities and all that. I'd like to hear more of, how you were able to integrate those people in this GBV exercise. Thank you so much.
Okay, so we've got a good some questions on that front so I don't know, I will pass over to the speakers to see. Sasan, I don't know if you wanted to kick us off with the indicators questions. It's open over to all of you.
Hello everyone. So yes, concerning the indicators, we were very keen into ensuring that we are measuring both women economic empowerment and the gender-based violence indicators. And as I said previously, that we were focusing on different levels of intervention, that we were willing to assess everything related to women at the individual level. And this was referred to changes on, for example, how women see herself, how she considers her role, and the role of other women in the society, how she perceives her economic role, confidence in taking decisions and actions that concern herself and other women. In addition, of course, to other things that are directly related to access to jobs and confidence to take another jobs, etc. In terms of relational, the focus on relationship and power dynamics, it included changes at the household through the relationship with household members, with community level at in general, how much she can influence, for example,
changes in community and decision making with local authority, etc. And the environmental level, it was mainly about shifts that can happen in social norms, attitudes, and beliefs in the wider societies at the informal level, and at the formal level, changes that can happen in the political or legislative framework, although we are not really working at the level of legislative framework, unfortunately. This concerning the indicators, and definitely our broad objective of this project is to see how much women are economically empowered in terms of access and control and benefits from economic opportunities and resources, and at the same time seeing how much the inclusion of GBV prevention within the overall women economic participation has succeeded in accelerating the women's economic participation indicators. This, in a nutshell, what we are trying to measure through our evaluation framework. Over.
Thank you, Sasan. I don't know if there's other colleagues from Lebanon or Anik who would want to complement Sasan and address some of the other questions that we just came in.
Yeah, I could probably just jump in regarding the household finances question. I think Sashiko asked. So there is another program within the soft skills component. It really focuses on the Indashakirwa, and we will have a follow-up webinar to discuss that more in detail. But there is specific topics and sessions within the soft skills training that really focus on household finance management and positive communication, and also really engaging couples as well. So this is where we highlight how women can have more of an active role and how men can understand that women who work are not competing to be breadwinners, but it's a collective joint effort. So these are the types of sessions that we do with women and men and couples together. That would be to answer that question. And to answer Obi's question regarding people with special needs, there was an attempt to identify and also to reach out to individuals. However, you have to keep in mind also that there is still a lot of stigma in Lebanon regarding people with disabilities, unfortunately, and their ability to access jobs. But the whole consortium did do more of an effort to reach out and identify individuals that could benefit from this project as well. And that's something that could also be a lesson learned for us to really engage in as well.
Great, thank you. Maybe I can move on to Zainab, who had her or they or his offer to identify your hand up for a while. And then I've got Gulistan and Leon and Stan. Over to you.
Hello. Hi, Jessica. Do you hear me?
Yes, yes, we can hear you well. Thank you.
Okay, so this is Zainab from Oxfam, Iraq. I have two questions related. One of them it's related to the PSS. So maybe colleagues from ACTED and ABAD, they can answer that question. They have mentioned about the soft skills that we're providing throughout the activities implementations. So I wonder what kind of the soft skills we're providing, and they have mentioned also the Biqa and South, it was their location of intervention. So are the soft skills that were provided during the PSS activities were the same in the both of the locations, or there was a prior criteria have been made so that they can meet let's say the need of the market? And I would like also to know what kind of PSS or soft skills, if it's possible, have been made or conducted through the project implementation. And my next question is related to the how the mitigation of the risks related to the GBV in the concept of, for example, if we are empowering a woman to have the opportunities of work or livelihood, or to be a financial, to have financial income. So maybe we overburden the women by being someone from the household or a male to control that financial income, then she would have to do both housework and also to control the her financial income. So like I would like to know if there was any cases have been come up and how they have managed that, how they help it. For example, if we call them the survivor or if we call them the beneficiaries in terms of the mitigating such risks.
Great, thank you, Nathan. Excuse me. Thank you, Zainab. Yeah, Gary, over to you.
Yeah, I could answer those questions. Thank you, Zainab, for those really interesting questions. So to answer your first question regarding the PSS that we've utilized, Abad has developed the Basic Life Skills Program, or BLSP, which is a curriculum that has been endorsed by UNICEF and also by the Lebanese Ministry of Social Affairs. So it is it's a program that you could find online as part of our resources that includes over 36 sessions. But due to the limitation of the project and also due to COVID, we had to basically pick and choose the best topics and the best content to utilize for this project. And a lot of those had to do focused more on household management, self-esteem, positive dynamics, positive communications within the household. So we specifically chose sessions that really match really well with what the consortium was doing. So to answer your question, BICA in the South, we utilized the same package. Of course, we did some tailoring based on the needs of the specific group itself. So this is where we really use a participatory approach. So at the beginning of every session, we really try to capture what the needs of the women are. And then based on that, we tailor the program from our existing toolbox that we have. To answer your second question, how do we mitigate GBV? So as I said, there is also another component, which is the couples curriculum, which focuses on 16 sessions. And from the session, there's a lot of work that's done at the household level between men and women. And this includes a lot of joint exercises or quote unquote homework that is given to the couple. And this is where they can really collectively work together to see how they can divide roles between men and women without having to utilize gendered and stereotyped roles of women as, okay, you're working at the house, you are a breadwinner, but now you also have to do housework chores. This is where discussions of equality, shared experiences, and shared household dynamics is really focused and discussed. And throughout any process, whenever Abad is doing any sort of intervention, we tell beneficiaries at any point that if they are at risk of GBV or feel like they have been GBV survivors, to contact our 24/7 helpline, where they would be directed and guided by a caseworker who would then work with them collectively on developing an action plan if they are GBV, if they are in need of GBV assistance.
Terrific. Thank you.
Just let me add, sorry, Jessica, on the first question by Zainab, that the PSS sessions are provided for women in BICA and South, so in both governorates. And as mentioned by Sausan, we follow the same pathway. We start with the technical trainings, and then the women are encouraged to follow the PSS sessions. Just this small note. Thanks.
Great. Before taking the next question from Gulistan, I just wanted to check in with Anik and Sausan if there was anything further to add. Okay, great. We'll keep the ball rolling. So Gulistan, over to you.
Yeah, thank you so much, and hi to everyone. These presentations were really grateful and very useful for us. We are also in UNDP Iraq implementing such a project in one of the governorate in Diyala, and we are in the beginning or in the middle of the implementation of the project. These your sessions and all your learnings, challenges, gains, and all those which you have shared with us, these are extremely, extremely useful for us to make sure that we will follow some of your learnings and all those things. My question is that based on this project, there are wonderful gains in terms of personal level, community level, even institutional level. So my fear is that once usually projects are completed, it's really hard to sustain some of those critical gains, especially when it comes for GBV. Is there any mechanism or there are any arrangements are in place to sustain those beautiful gains so they can be lost on for the brighter future for women who are part of it, as well as for others who may take good example from these projects? So thank you.
Thank you. I could answer that question. And also, I think it can really tie in well with Obi's question, which I had forgotten to answer, apologies, regarding sustainability. So as I said, this project really is, it includes various stakeholders and right holders, which includes also the municipalities. So one of our main components is really working with municipalities on developing their own gender plans, which includes giving them GBV training and also linking them to other GBV actors in the areas that they implement and work in. So what we do with our gender index assessment is, first of all, see what they know about GBV and women's rights and protection, and also how familiar they are with the referral mechanism and pathways of existing agencies within their catchment area. So one of the action plans that we do is actually develop a municipal action plan together collectively that really puts gender in the forefront. And this is how we as Abad, from the beginning of the project until the end, we work together with the municipality to have regular check-ins to see where they are in terms of benchmarking. So we do a lot of capacity building for municipal staff on GBV, where to do referrals if cases of GBV are made aware in their communities. So it's really working with them collectively just to ensure that there is sustainability at the municipal level. Also, which we will discuss more in our subsequent webinar that has to focus a lot on the Inda Shakirwa, we at Abad and Acted with the consortium are creating what we call as gender cafes. These gender cafes are going to be established within the municipality, and it would include trained couples, women and men, and also municipal staff, and also influential community members who will come together to collectively plan and have initiatives to sustain these types of gains throughout the long-term impact of the project. So please join us at the following webinar because we will have a lot more to discuss back then.
I'm just jumping in to add on what Gary said in terms of sustainability. It is very important to note that since we have adopted the Inda Shakirwa program, which is an evidence-based, successful GBV prevention, interactive, participatory program, this will be an important sustainability in terms of knowledge management, and it can be adapted to other contexts. It is the first resource that it is adapted in Arabic, and it can be adapted easily to other contexts. And throughout the adaptation, which will be discussed later on in the upcoming webinar, we have two modalities for online modalities and modality for face-to-face training. So I think this is an important tool for sustainability at the same time that can be used by other organizations. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Any of the other speakers? I think also from the global project side, just to share, I think it's important too for us at UNDP to be thinking about sustainability and the sustainability of all of the sort of organizational culture environment that is necessary, that fosters this kind of collaboration and these multidisciplinary approaches that is necessary for integration. So that's something you know, at the global level and the project level that I'm on, that we're trying to integrate and fostering a lot of these kinds of conversations in sharing the experience and the knowledge that Sausan and the team there have, and Anik working with the other pilots of this project as well. And so there's also a bit more of a cascade effect, and indeed, as a result of this experience in Lebanon, there will be an initiative within UNDP to be scaling up this approach in other crisis affected countries. And so the more to come on that. And if there's UNDP folks on the call who are specifically looking, working in the livelihood space, we'll definitely be in conversation about how, if this is an approach of interest, and how potentially you can be involved and see if it's something that would be a good fit for you. And so with that, we definitely look to Selson and the team there to be leading on this and ensuring the legacy within the country office, but also beyond. So with that, I'll pass over to Leon, and then we have Lori and Miriam who are on deck. So I see your hands, but Leon, first over to you.
Yeah, good morning, good afternoon, everybody. The question is for the global team, and specifically to Anik and you, Jessica. The global project is really looking how GBV can be integrated within other components. And here we are studying the livelihood aspect. I think we are lucky to have a fully gender transformative livelihood project that we are analyzing today, which I wish in all cases, in other cases, that we are able to have a higher gender transformative or gender market livelihood projects. We all aim for. Unfortunately, sometimes in the crisis, we had to respond, and we don't have the luxury of having the time frame or the funding for responding. The question here is, what are advices or recommendations for livelihood projects that have lower gender marker, that not only focusing on a transformative livelihood program? Thank you.
Ooh, that's a tough one. Anik, I see.
I mean, so I'll say from the outset, it's a brilliant question, and we don't have, fantastic conclusive data to recommend one way or the other. But I would say, just based on my experience on the integration projects that I've worked on so far, is that I agree that every project begins with somewhere on a continuum, and some of the success strategies, key success strategies, or the challenges may be louder or more powerful than others, depending on where a project is starting. I think a lot of it depends on both your setting and your time frame. So for example, if you have a 6-month project, it's going to be a lot more difficult to do a comprehensive GBV prevention integration than if you have a 3-year project, for example. I think if the shorter the time frame, the more you want to focus on making sure that you have really good experts that you can bring on board right away, and also perhaps do the focusing on ensuring that the existing program is not exacerbating GBV or GBV risks. So ensuring that you integrate really good GBV monitoring, risk monitoring, and mitigation planning. So I would say that's the first place to start. The next place that I would sort of layer that I would say in terms of priorities in a short-term project is making sure that you link to existing organizations who can provide support and who have a long history of providing support to GBV survivors. So it's really important that this is, those relationships. So again, it's not about your project doing everything, but about making strategic partnerships and links and ensuring that those referral pathways are as smooth and barrierless as possible for the people who are going to need them, and think through how is your project going to facilitate the connection with people that you meet to those services or what have you. So that's what I would say at the outset. If you can't go through an entire process of internal advocacy and capacity building and really sort of thoughtful design and several iterations, much like the project that you started so wonderfully for us, Leon, much like it's done in Lebanon. I think that would be my recommendation, just based on what I've learned from the global project so far.
Thank you, Anik. I think, yeah, this is the question. I wanted to see how we can build on the model that I was joining at the beginning in Lebanon, to see how can we benefit other models in other countries. And I'm offering the livelihood under Fund for Stability in Iraq. If we can pilot some GBV and livelihood within the short-term lenses. I think in the model of Lebanon, we were lucky to have also a donor who was looking for a crisis response multi-year and having a gender lens like Canada, which I think Canada is influencing other donors, and we are seeing this frame moving forward. So my request to you as a global team is how we can strengthen UNDP response and having in the short term of livelihood response and recovery, more integrated GBV livelihood programming. I offer myself being in Iraq right now to pilot something and to analyze and study, and let's benefit from this opportunity. Thank you.
I think that's phenomenal, Leon. It's always great to have you as the our staunchest champion of these things of GBV prevention in these spaces. And maybe just to share as well that the newly established Gender and Crisis Facility within the Crisis Bureau of UNDP is, it's been up and running for a while now, and it's galvanizing more resources and people. I don't know if we have Anu or Caitlin on the line right now, but if we do, they can certainly share a bit more. But part of what they're going to be focusing on is really strengthening this piece. And so let's absolutely talk offline about how we, the global team, but also working through the Gender and Crisis Facility, how we can support, take these efforts forward in Iraq and hopefully elsewhere. Yes, okay. In the interest of time, and I don't think that we're going to be getting to maybe all of these questions in the chat, so my apologies for that. But if we don't get to your question in the chat today, we will be able to share responses over email. Lori, I know you've had your hand up for a while, so I'd like to pass the floor over to you.
Great. Thank you so much. I have a question. I'm not sure if it should be directed to the global team or the local team, but I'm very intrigued and I think it's very interesting, the consortium approach that you have been taking. And I'm wondering if you could say a little bit about the origins of that. I mean, how did you actually create the consortium? Was it that a terms of reference was put out and groups self-organized to apply? Was it that somebody approached different potential collaborators and put together sort of a team? Because oftentimes it's those initial decisions of who's working together with whom and the buy-in that are so critical. So I'm just wondering if you could say just a short bit about how that was done with this project.
Thank you, Lori. I will reply to this question. So yes, we have developed a terms of reference, which included all the project outcomes. And in the terms of reference, we have specified the type of organizations that we would like to work with. And we included that we need different types of capacities and expertise that include livelihood, working with SMEs, working on technical skills and certain value chains that we are working on, and at the same time, working with gender mainstreaming with the municipality prevention. So since the beginning, we have requested diversified capacities, and therefore, in the terms of reference, we have included a clause where we have encouraged applying organization to have consortiums rather than just one organization that is implementing the project, knowing that because it's a very complex project with different outcomes, require different expertise, it will be difficult for one organization to be responsible for everything. This is first. Second, we have organized an inception meeting where we have invited different organizations. After advertising the terms of reference, we project and we
mentioned during this meeting that this is a good opportunity for networking between all these organizations in order to see who has which capacity, which expertise, and to join efforts together to apply in one proposal, joint proposal to UNDP. This is from UNDP perspectives, and definitely we have selected the organization based on this joint effort and diversified capacities. But I can leave it for Joseph, since ACTED are the consortium lead. Maybe he can add some more information. Thank you.
Thank you, Susan, and thank you, Lori, for this question. Actually, during the project design phase, so based on the call for proposal, we checked which organizations they have the required expertise and with whom we had positive previous experiences, and that's how we started the communication with the organizations and to build the project. And we wanted a strong partner working on the GBV components, and we know Abad's work, and we already had some previous short and small projects with. So this is how it was done. And then as mentioned by Sausan during the meeting, the Q&A, we had some discussions with the organizations, and we came up with the project. It took some time, but it was a design phase, and we wanted to brainstorm with all the partners and to see what added value they can have to this consortium. Over.
Great, thank you so much. And just one quick follow-up on that is, could you just say how long the project has been going on and how long the design, kind of co-design phase was? Because oftentimes that, I think, is one of the limitations that really get in the way of people being able to work in this way.
The project started in 2018, almost. However, in 2018, we have engaged in gendered value chain study, formative research, etc., in order to ensure that we have well-tailored intervention that address really women's needs and what is the context in Lebanon. Therefore, after this formative research, we have developed the terms of reference with specific activities and requisitions from partners, capacities, etc., around 2019. And I would have to say that it took us around 1 year in order to finalize the call for proposal and to select the partners organizations, because, as I said previously, we wanted to make sure that selected partners organization have diversified capacity and expertise and will bring an added value for the project and the different outcomes, either working on gender mainstreaming with the municipalities, working on advocacy and awareness raising around women's economic rights and women's protection from gender-based violence, or working with women cooperatives and enterprise in order to increase their competitiveness, etc. In addition to the needs for the implementation of the Shakirwa, which we are going to discuss in the upcoming webinar. So the implementation really started in around the beginning of 2020. However, we faced several challenges throughout the implementation. It started at the beginning with the 17 October events in Lebanon and revolution. Then we had COVID-19, and then now we had the financial crisis. So the implementation was interrupted, and we had several times to stop, to reflect together as partners, either from UNDP and from the consortium side, and to see how we can adapt the intervention to ensure that we are still relevant and adaptable with the context. And it is supposed to be completed next year by 2022. Over.
Great, Sausan, thank you. And I'm conscientious of the time here, but I do I'm conscious of Miriam, who's had her hand raised, and I think just to add on Sasan, because she's so humble on this, I think the distinct phases, and you see in the project management cycle, I think what I think has been quite successful and really unique about the work of the team is that it's not like there has been one implementation phase and then moving forward into separate cycles. I think that there has been really strong iterative processes that have been done in such a real collaborative way, which I think particularly in the face of crisis after crisis, I mean, COVID-19 is just one, it is really important to reflect on the design and look at the question, examine the questions of relevance and adaptation, as Sausan had just said. So with that, I will pass over to Miriam, who I'm afraid will be our last question, but there will be time for all the speakers to respond, and then I will pass over to Yosu for some closing remarks. And I will say I'm so happy to have all these questions coming in, and I'm sorry there hasn't been time for everyone to respond. We will, use fully utilize all of the tools at our disposal to keep the conversation going, and we do have 2 more webinars on this topic. So as questions do come in even after this webinar, please, we'll have a Spark Blue page. You can post those questions, and we'll do our best as we can to be integrating them into our upcoming discussions. So with that, Miriam, over to you, and thank you for your patience.
Thank you. I will try to be very precise and concise. Well, I'm curious about the how they measured the changes. How did they measure also women empowerment and the changes in gender-based violence? Because sometimes in our region, like the MENA or Arab states region, women, they usually don't report violence, and then when they receive cash, they are also like they want to continue to receive it, so they also don't report if there are any cases of gender-based violence. So that's one question that I wanted to ask to the team, and also I'm curious about the gender indicator, like of the municipality, if they can explain a bit further. So that's all.
Okay, I could answer these questions, Miriam. So to answer the first question that you had regarding changes in PSS, so we have our set of indicators that we utilize. These have to do based on the content that we have created. So it has to do a lot with how much women feel more empowered, more self-confident, etc. So we do a baseline, or you could consider it as a pre-test before we do the soft skills training. And then we do a follow-up questionnaire at the end of the session to see how much changes there has been. But also we do a lot of qualitative questions as well. We ask the women how more engaged do they feel in taking in decisions at the household level? Have they noted any sort of changes at the way that dynamics are between the husband and the wife, etc. So we do have a series of questions that we ask, and this gives us an indication of how satisfied or how much gains have been made. To answer your second question regarding GBV, what we do is that we are centralized and specialized in the areas that we work in. So what we do is that we try to measure the number of GBV referrals that have been made or received in the areas where we have our women and girls safe spaces. So this is one way of indicating and seeing whether or not there has been an increase or decrease in GBV. And one of the questions that we do ask survivors is, how did they come to hear about Abad and the services that we receive? Some of them can self-disclose and say, I was participating in the soft skills training, you guys gave me the hotline number, and I was confident enough to call to ask for help. That's one way that we could assess. To answer your second series of questions regarding the gender indicators that we use for municipalities, they really focus on whether or not municipalities are aware of any GBV protection actors in their area, how gender sensitive and inclusive they are by asking if they have any female staff and staff with them, and whether or not they've participated in any sort of focus group discussions with women groups that have to do with making changes at the community level by engaging women. And it's actually like a whole assessment tool. It's over 8 different sections, but definitely we could share that with you as well in subsequent webinars as well.
Terrific. Were any of the other speakers, do they want to add to any of that?
Yes, I just wanted to add that we are keen to have every single woman have a baseline evaluation before that she start any involvement in any type of activities within this project. And the baseline is really very holistic in terms of including both the women economic empowerment, civic, and at the same time GBV within the questions. So in addition, of course, to questions around ownerships and control, etc., we have a question around decision making in the house, around resilience, and in terms of gender-based violence, not the gender-based violence, but because we do not ask directly about the experience of gender-based violence, we rather ask about the relationship, for example, with the husband or with other male household members, etc. We have questions at the same time around perceptions of municipalities' role in women's economic empowerment and safety and the engagement with them. Questions around community support for women's protection and economic empowerment, and a big set of questions around beliefs and attitudes and behaviors towards gender equality and economic roles and gender-based violence, including as well recognition of care work and behaviors of the balance of power in the relationship, and acceptability of violence, communication with husband, without necessarily asking about women's direct experience of violence in the household. Thank you.
Terrific. Yeah, and I think that's, another example of how safety and really how the constituents of the program are really at the forefront of all the decision makings throughout M&E and the whole gamut of it. So I'm sorry to be closing the discussion when we have still so much more to share and to discuss. So there will be those subsequent webinars, which you will all receive more information about. Yeah, just been being respectful to everybody's time here and all the other commitments that I'm sure you all have today. I will pass back over to Yosu for some final remarks for now, but not final remarks in this conversation, because that's to be continued. Over to you.
Thank you, Jessica. Such an interesting conversation and dialogue, so many questions. Even I have questions that I couldn't share, particularly on the gender index assessment to municipalities. I would like to learn more about that as well. So interesting. So, I mean, it's late. Three quick comments from my side. One is, I mean, we can see clearly that without addressing GBV, we can't really achieve the 2030 agenda. That's clear. And somehow when I learn about this kind of projects and all the great work that we are doing, I wonder how we could work before sometimes without really addressing this, right? So this is, I think, a key message from this webinar, that without addressing GBV and without putting gender inequalities at the center of our projects, we can really advance. My second comment or reaction is that it's wonderful to see also partners from outside UNDP participating here. I think it's crucial also to promote this learning from outside and inside our organization, and hopefully we can contribute also to other organizations to their work. I think that's great, and it's been a great element for me. And lastly, my last comment is really to congratulate all of you, Jessica, Sauson, Anik, Joseph, and Renata, Gary, for the great presentation. Actually, you have created the appetite for the next conversations, which is not easy in this Zoom kind of many webinars that we have, but really looking forward for the next one and to learn more about Indisakirwa and all the initiatives that you are implementing. So thank you so much. It was a pleasure for me also to learn more about this initiative, and looking forward to the next one. So thank you all for being here.
Great. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.